In the dictionary, sanctuary is described as a refuge, or safety from pursuit, persecution, or other danger, a sacred place. For me, though, it is not a high-ceilinged room filled with stained glass crosses and pews. It is impossibly large from all sides, dark and bruised and filled with light, and its movements are described like horses running to the shore. When I was little, my favourite book was Magic Beach by Alison Lester. I would sit rereading it for hours, mesmerised by the way the sea was drawn, the soft white lines circling the rock pools in the deeper water. It felt like a sacred text. It was hard sometimes at home. I would slip out at dusk when the road was empty, trailing down the makeshift pathway through the trees to the sea. Sometimes I would stay there until the moon blinked awake and the sky became solemn. If I walked down to the far end of the beach, all I could hear was the murmuring water, the people suddenly ant-like and distant. It was easy to imagine myself worlds away, printing words into the sand and imagining sharks swimming up to kiss the sandbanks. In Hastings, Bottle Alley looked out over the water. At high tide it comes crashing into the tunnel, flooding it temporarily like a forgotten city. At night the alley is pitch black. I imagine walking into it would be like entering the whale's belly, or the mouth of the sea. When my eating disorder worsened, and when my grandparents would cry or yell or plead with me, I would unlock the rusty bike from underneath the house and bolt down the twisting lanes to the sea. Past the community gardens, the bright primary school, the dishevelled pub on the corner of the street, and the hissing train station. I'd narrowly miss cars to get there, forget which side of the road I was supposed to be on, and skid over the cracks in the cement. But it would be worth it. The sea was always there waiting, calling, stretching itself out across the pebbly shore and expecting nothing from me. I would sit there for hours listening until it got cold and the tide changed. Sometimes, on bad days, I would walk the length of the boardwalk to the cable cars and ride up to the top of the white cliffs. Being up so high, the sea flattened and overtaking the houses down below, I would know peace. There are photos of me mere months old sitting on a blanket propped up with pebbles. You can't see the sea in the photo, but you can feel it. The sand covering my short legs, the white bonnet over my forehead, the umbrella offering shade from the heat, strangers in swimsuits in the background. Whenever my dad tells people about what a happy kid I was, that's the photo he always digs up to prove it. He only wants to talk about memories from when I was a kid. He keeps the same lot of photos turning on his laptop screensaver. The oldest version of me in those images is from when I was 6. In Denmark, the sea is mostly flat. The soft arches of would-be waves are silent when they fall against the sand. The jellyfish are smooth, fitting into the palm of your hand, bobbing along the surface like weightless stones. Some mornings the smell of seaweed punctures the air and stays for a week straight, the waves never strong enough to move it along. When I was on student exchange, every evening I would document the sea in my notebook, noting the colour changes at sunset and towards dusk. In summer, the water only rose to around knee-height. Crowds of swimmers would walk until there were small dots on the horizon. On the days when homesickness sunk in and when I became restless well beyond the time frame for jet lag, I would walk behind the summer houses in the pale blue dawn and sit by the sea. It looked nothing like it did at home, but it was stubborn, never changing, that same familiar blue. There is a graveyard which sits on the sloping cliff overlooking the ocean. The graves poke out across the grass, some cracked in two or blank from the wear of the storms and passing time. Mourners walk to the bottom of the graveyard to stare out at the water, attempting to talk themselves out of grief. It is an open-air cathedral, the sea singing to the dead with the escarpment wrapped around it, as if at any moment it would tip into the sea. When my grandma passed away, her ashes were scattered on a similar hill, miles away from there, a stone's throw from our family doctor and the echoing museum that she loved. Sometimes I imagine that it could be the same hill, the same sea, and I visit her there too. Almost 2 years into the pandemic, with strict curfews and tightened movement restrictions, I couldn't get to the sea. I tried to imagine myself by it. I'd look at videos my dad would send me from home or make playlists that might be able to capture the sound of the waves. I'd even reread passages from To the Lighthouse to remember it. The sea and the sky looked all one fabric, as if the sails were stuck high up in the sky or the clouds had dropped down into the sea. Some days I woke up convinced I'd made it all up, that it had vanished, replaced by a vast cracked desert that held no memory of water. When we could drive there again, it rained for a week. I turned off the engine to listen to the sea scream and hurl itself against the rocks, and remember all of its lives.